Hi, good morning. Today is December 9th, 2025, and it is 9:07 a.m. U.S. Central Time. My name is Reynaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and I'm recording this video from my home located at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And this home is located 300 feet away from the home of a gentleman by the name of Robert Mueller, who was the director of the FBI for several years. And that is very relevant to this conversation. Excuse me. So today, this morning, I just have a few updates that I want to record. Um, and it's a collection of different things, but I'm going to name this specific demo, D91-7, meaning I'm going to add it to the series of demos 91, which talk about the all the things in the series 91, and that originally was intended to be a three-part series. But what's happening is that the network they keep adding, they keep getting deeper into it. They keep adding evidence against them, right? Um, so I have to keep increasing the series, right? Which I mean is good, right? But it's also funny in a way. So anyhow, um, I try to structure this demo in a way that kind of makes sense, because it has some things that are not really related to the legal topics, but I mean they're kind of related, but I try to mix it, right? So so with that, I'm gonna get started. So I'm going to start by sharing the talking points. Mm, 1 second. I think I'll have to close this window and open a new one. Okay. Um, yes. So the first thing I wanted to mention, there was in the previous demo, there was a segment in which I was talking about Alejandro Andrade, right? Alberto Andrade, who was the treasurer of Venezuela for several years with Chavez. And I think he pled guilty or he was convicted. I don't, I don't know the details, but I don't remember the details. But a lot of his properties in Florida got seized by authorities here in the U.S. years ago, right? Uh, and I mean, and this was a very, how do I say this? This is a very prominent case, right? In the you know justice circles in the U.S. because the scheme that he was involved in was a scheme of more than $1 billion with B, right? So $1,000 million, right? To give an idea of the scale of that operation, right? But in the previous demo, I said something about him, right? And his mark, that his equestrian house, right, had the equestrian marker, which also was present in the second most prominent property in the US, according to the geo index. I mean, the second most prominent property for the network in the US has the equestrian marker, the same marker that he has in his home that got seized by authorities. So, I mean, that is very telling, right? But when I said that, I looked him up, right, because I didn't remember the name, and I looked him up in Google in the demo, like, and you can see in that demo that I, typed the query, and Google's answer was to show as a navigational result in Google is a result that Google is super sure that this is what you're looking for, and they display this car on the top that is a big car that basically takes the entire screen, right, and usually has photos from Wikipedia and etc. So Google displays for the query, and that's in the previous demo. Let me see if I can do it. I don't know if they fixed it, right? Maybe they fixed it. Alberto Andrade. Yeah, they fixed it, right? So now it doesn't trigger. It doesn't trigger the knowledge card for the wrestler. But in the previous demo, you can see, so I mean, this means that after I did that, they fixed the problem, right? So they're monitoring these demos. But anyhow, and they do this with Liana Technologies. Liana Technologies is the operator that does that. They don't manipulate this inside of Google, they manipulate it from outside, right? To not mix Google into this, right? It doesn't mean that they don't have people or ways to control Google within Google. It just means that they're being careful about the liability they create. So they use Liana Technologies, which is in the Netherlands. So, and the guy there is somebody called, I think, what is his name? Sumil Suna, something like that. Yeah, this guy, Samuli Tursas. That's the guy. So he is the person that pulls that off, right? And he is the one that they use. I mean, Liana Technologies is the company that they use to attack every technology company that compete with their companies, right? So that's how they demote them in Google. And that's how they were targeting me for years, since 2005. And that's what brought them to this point that they are today, right? Because they kept doing this for 20 years. Against every single idea that I had and tried to promote, they use, Liana Technologies and what's his name again? Samuli Tursas, right? So they used Samuli Tursas for 20 years to attack my companies, right? And it resulted in me getting the database of Elon Musk for the geo index, basically. So anyhow, so in that demo, if you watch that demo, you will see that when I do the query, Alberto Andrade, what comes up as navigational result in the knowledge card is a wrestler, a Mexican wrestler, right? When I saw that in the demo, I laughed, right? And I mean, I didn't explain much why I was laughing, but you can see that I'm laughing, right? And I say, these people are crazy. But I didn't. So I was doing QA on the demo, on the recording, and I realized that I should have given more context on this, right? Because this is a very serious thing. What you saw in that segment, right? If you watch that demo, what you're witnessing there is Google manipulating the reality, right? How can a Mexican wrestler that is wearing a face mask can be more prominent than a person that stole $1,000 billion? And if you think about what that means, right? To steal $1,000 million, $1 billion, a lot of things had to happen, right? Like the amount of energy in that amount of money. I don't know how to articulate this, right? But a lot of people suffered because he stole $1,000 million. I mean, that money was supposed to help a lot of people back home in Venezuela, but that money got diverted to his pockets, right? And a lot of people died because they didn't have medicine, because they didn't have security, because the police didn't work, because many different things. But if you combine all those deaths, right, that had to happen so he could have that $1 billion in his pocket. And he's only one individual, right? So how can a Mexican wrestler with the face covered by a mask be more prominent according to Google algorithms than this criminal, right? So there you can see the danger of how they manipulate reality using these private companies. And this is why this needs to be regulated, right? And punished if they do this, right? So I just wanted to because at the moment I laugh, but I laugh not because it's not serious. I mean, this is one of the most serious things that they can do. But I laugh because I mean I've seen how they manipulate these things at Google for so many years, as I'm saying, right, for more than 20 years, that at this point, to me, what they do is laughable. Right? When I see the kind of obvious manipulations they do, I laugh, right? But it doesn't mean that I think it's a joke. It's not a joke, right? It's a very serious thing what they're doing. So I just wanted to mention that. Second point I have is about the 387 court, right? And now this is more about the legal things. So if we go to Google and we search for Fort Bend County car records, and we go here, and then we click on civil county. and we search for that case specifically. I'm just doing this to see if they put something in the docket today. They haven't put anything, right? So you see, the last thing that happened was that I filed on December 2nd this motion opposing to the withdrawal of the Adams law firm from the case because, they defrauded the court and other courts. And I detail the fraud itself in here. And I attach all the evidence, including, the confession of Troy Pickett to the fraud. Everything is in here, right? And I'm also asking for sanctions against the Adams law firm, William Kyle Adams, Troy Pickett, Morgan Heibner, etc. And the evidence, as I said, is here, right? So they don't have to go look for anything. Like everything is contained in this packet. Like the same thing I did with the federal court. The same evidence that is in the federal court is in this docket. And this docket is visible to the Supreme Court of Texas because I have that petition for writ of mandamus filed there since 11/25, which has been something like 14 days at this point, right? And we're waiting for a decision of the Supreme Court of Texas. Anyhow, so what I was going to say is that if you look at this, right, and this, remember, there was supposedly a hearing, a proceeding, they call it, right, that Morgan Heibner noticed and notified me PI filing on October 28th. I'm talking about this filing, index 102, where she says there's going to be a proceeding on December 2nd, right, that date where I filed index 128, to decide whether she can withdraw from the case. Now, what I want to say is that today, being December 9th, 2025, and being 9:19 a.m., it's been exactly more than 7 calendar days since this court proceeding, quote unquote, should have taken place, right? And there is this motion here that clearly spells out allegations of criminal activity, really, with evidence, right, attached as exhibits. And the court hasn't said a word in 7 days. So the 387th court has gone into silence. They haven't said one word. And the opposing counsel being served, legally served, with these allegations of criminal activity, they have not said a word. I'm talking about William Kyle Adams. Sorry. I'm talking about William Kyle Adams, Morgan Heibner, and Troy Pickett, right? Being served, legally served with these allegations of criminal activity, they have not said a word in 7 days. So, I ran the legal pipeline, the legal vaccine pipeline to see, what would be my next logical step, right? But the pipeline doesn't have enough data. There's no one case, they couldn't find one case in Texas in which the court has abdicated in this form, meaning in which the court ceased to function. Like this is an abdication, right? The court was supposed to have a proceeding on the 2nd of December, and for 7 days they have not said a word about that proceeding or what happened or what they did. So they basically let go of their responsibility, right? They should have said something, right? And the opposing counsel also abdicated. I mean, they are being served with this document that says, we believe you committed this crime, and they have not challenged that. So, the pipeline, the way it works, is looking for cases where similar situations have occurred. And it cannot find one case in which both the court and the opposing counsel abdicated in this way. So, it can't really produce meaningful strategies, right? So basically what I'm doing here is asking as a favor, right, to the Venezuelan informant, if you could please check with the human lawyer to see what would be the next logical step. From what I've learned as a pro se litigant using tech to fight this, I imagine it would be a motion to strike the supposed order, right? The void order that is fraudulent and is the confession of the fraud, to strike it and to dismiss the entire case. Because if the court is not going to say a word, then why are we here, right? What's the purpose of this? But I imagine that would be a petition for writ of mandamus, right? Another one. But I don't know if that should be with the First Appellate Court, which is going to go to Justice Adams, right? And we know what's going to happen. Or if that should be another petition of writ of mandamus with the Supreme Court of Texas, right? A separate case. I don't know, right? So if you could please, and ask you as a favor, throw me a bone here because the pipeline is stuck. I need to get it on a stock, and I need human input for that. So that's the purpose of this comment. It's not a rant, it's a plea for help. Okay, so now the next topic is a bit longer. It's also legal, and it has to do with, in fact, let's try to find it here, right? Let's see. I'll try to do my trick here with the ChatGPT thing that Google has. Which one is the demo that describes the traffic citation given by Officer Nunes on the day that the author was going to file a document in federal court? So there was an incident in which I think it was in October, in which I was going to federal court to file a document, and they stopped me with the police of Fort Bend saying that my vehicle had blue lights, which is not true. The lights, like I have this, it's an armored vehicle. And armored vehicles usually are equipped with a strobe lights for civilian use. Because, if you have an armored vehicle, it's for a reason, right? Like you believe somebody may try to harm you, and you need a way to alert, authorities or somebody that something is going on if something goes on, right? So this vehicle has strobe lights that are white, and those are for civilian use. The police lights are blue, white, and red, and they are of a specific color, and they flash at a specific frequency. All these things are regulated by federal regulations and state regulations. I mean, I'm talking about the colors and the frequency of flashing of those lights that identify a police vehicle, an emergency vehicle. These things are regulated. And the civilians, like me, we can only use white lights, right? And that's why those lights are white. And I bought this vehicle from a civilian dealership, right? I didn't buy this vehicle from law enforcement. So it's not possible that it has blue lights. But this police officer stopped me that day saying that the vehicle had blue lights. I told him these are white lights, and I showed them to him. And then he said, yes, you're right, but let me call my supervisor. And then he went and made a phone call from his cell phone. He did not use the police radio. And he did make the call being outside of the police patrol car, which was strange. I imagine he didn't want to get recorded by the equipment that they have there to audit the police. So he made a phone call, and after that he came and said, my supervisor told me to give you a ticket, a citation anyways. And he gave me a citation. So what I did is that I retained a lawyer. And this is Mr. George Napier, N-A-P-I-E-R, right? And, he told me, yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to help you in this case, and we're going to go to court. And then he said, well, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to ask for a new court date. And this was maybe like a month ago. And, that's, this thing is a stock, so I'm going to just keep giving you the story. He told me that he was going to ask for a court date, and he was going to tell me when this court date was. I never heard from him about this court date. Never, ever, right? He did not send me an email. He did not send me a letter, nothing, right? So what happened was that yesterday, December 8th, I get an email at 10 a.m. saying, this is when I got the email, right, when I read it. And the email was sent, I think, like at 9:11, something like that. And the email was from the assistant of Mr. George Napier. And the email said, hey, Rinaldo, we have a court date today at 9 a.m. Where are you, right? They never notified me of the court date yesterday, right? They're telling me that 11 minutes, they're sending me the email 11 minutes after the court date has supposedly started. Imagine that. How can I teleport myself to the court in 1 second? I can't, right? So of course I missed the court date. When I see the email 1 hour later, that's when I saw it at 10:11 a.m. I called him. I called the lawyer, right, immediately for my cell phone. I called him. I said, listen, I got this email saying that we have a court date, and I was not notified. And he said, well, don't worry, I handled it. That's what he said, right? But I asked, but I was not notified. This is very concerning to me. why was I not notified? And he said, well, we tried to call you, right? And then he said this in writing as well. He said, we tried to call you, but your cell phone is disconnected, which is not true. My cell phone is not disconnected. And I don't have any voicemail. So he did not leave a voicemail even, right? And even if he had, a voicemail or attempted phone call is not a legal notification. He had to notify me in writing that there is a hearing on this date, and it has to be at least 3 business days before the hearing, right? That's proper notice, right? And this is what I've been complaining about Morgan Heibner and their TTP of, not notifying me of things, right? With proper notice. But in any case, I missed the hearing, right? Which, if you think about it, is the same thing that I'm complaining about in the Supreme Court of Texas. What this is really is the denial of a hearing, right? They set it up in a way, they didn't notify me, in a way that I could not attend. And this accomplishes, I believe, right, multiple goals. One is that I do not get the hearing because, as I said in the previous demos, they cannot give me a hearing. If they give me a hearing, in reality, they know that I'm going to go there and I'm going to use every opportunity I have to say things on the record that will stay on the record, right, that are damaging to them. Like the phone call with the supervisor outside of the patrol car. Like, they can't let me say any of those things. They can't let me talk about the geo index, for example, right? They can't let me talk about the reports to the IRS on the record, right? Because this is going to be on the record and it's going to be audited by the FBI at some point, or the Secret Service. By the way, I learned yesterday in a documentary that the Secret Service has jurisdiction over this thing because of the financial manipulation, right? But I'll talk more about that later. Which is interesting because, of course, I already sent things to the Secret Service, right? So, anyhow, so they denied me the right to due process by denying me the hearing again with this traffic ticket, right? Which, fits the pattern. And let me show you that right here, right? So if you go to txcourts.gov and click on courts and then Supreme Court, and then case search, and then you search for this case number, 25-1055, right? This is the Supreme Court case that I have going. And then you can download the actual petition by clicking on this link. And you can see on page 3, right? On the first paragraph that says item number 3, this is within the argument section. It says, I'm going to read it because this is very short and this is exactly what I'm telling you. And I filed this on the 25th of November, 14 days ago. Sorry. So it says, the denial of a hearing is a denial of due process. The common thread through this entire saga is the absolute refusal of any court to grant realtor a hearing. The 387 District Court ignores his motions, like that motion of December 2nd for sanctions that is still waiting, and they abdicated. They just didn't reply to even, and this is a proceeding that Morgan Heibner and the Adams Law Firm created and scheduled. And so they go to the point that they are ignoring the Adams Law Firm. So this is a complete abdication, right? Like, they are ignoring both the petitioner and the respondent. So what is this court doing? Well, anyhow, the 387 District Court ignores his motions. The 11th Administrative Judicial Region denies recusal without a hearing. The First Court of Appeals dismisses petitions on procedural grounds. To be denied any forum to be heard on such grave matters, a void order, a multi-court fraud, the unconstitutional seizure of one's child, is a fundamental denial of due process that this court must rectify, right? So this is what I'm saying to the Supreme Court of Texas. And now, in this traffic citation, they do the same thing. They deny me the right to go to the hearing. How? Well, the attorney did not notify me, right? My own attorney. Imagine that. The own attorney that I'm paying, I paid this guy, right, to work for me. He did not notify me that I had a hearing. He only attempted, supposedly, right? I imagine he didn't really attempt to make a phone call because that would leave a record that the phone call connected, and he did not leave the message. But he says that he attempted to make a phone call. So, if I challenge that, it's going to be in the worst case for them, it's going to be the lawyer is incompetent, right? Maybe I can get sanctions, but, it's hard to show that they designed this, right? But I mean, in isolation. But if you put that together with this, you can see that this is a pattern, right? So even for a traffic citation, and even if I'm paying my own lawyer, I do not get a hearing, right? They block me from going to the hearing by my own lawyer not notifying me, right? But also, there's a lot of things related to this incident with Mr. Napier that are noteworthy, right? One is, so first of all, let me tell you, I think this is in reality, I mean, it accomplishes all this, right? But I think it's also an experiment that they're running. They want to know if the legal pipeline is able to catch this, right? I imagine, right? They may think that the legal pipeline is being held by a human lawyer that is helping me, right? So they want to see if I ask this question to somebody. But, you know, I run the pipeline and I reply to the lawyer. It's obvious that I did this with software, right? But in that conversation with him, that got flagged. All these things got flagged in that conversation, right? So he said multiple things, right? One thing is that he said, don't worry, I handled it, meaning he handled the fact that I did not show up to the hearing, right? But you see, this is problematic because me not showing up to the hearing really, besides denying me right to due process, paints me as an unresponsive person, like an irresponsible person, right? Somebody who was cited and said would appear in court and did not show up, right? And show up in a court with a party, the other party, the police, is the party that I'm suing in federal court. I'm suing the whole police department, even the sheriff, right? So the same party I'm suing now has documentary evidence to say or to argue that I am an irresponsible person, that I did not show up to court, right? So this is giving the adverse party ammunition to defend themselves on, or to justify or try to justify themselves on federal court, right? Saying that I'm a problematic person, that I did not show up to court. So you see, right? So this causes reputational damage that could help my adversary in the federal court, right? So that's another implication of this, right? It's not only the denial of the process, is also helping my adversary, right? Trying to fabricate, so they could fabricate an explanation, right, for their inactions or their actions. But it gets worse than that. Then my own lawyer start asking me about the federal case, right? He says, well, you know, you mentioned something about a federal case. Can you tell me where that's at? What are you trying to accomplish? What are your allegations? I stopped him right on his tracks. I said, listen, you are my attorney for the traffic citation, but you are not my attorney for the federal case. And I don't feel comfortable discussing with you my legal strategy on the federal case or the Supreme Court case because you have, you know, I don't know if I said it explicitly, but, you know, there is no attorney-client privilege on that, right? There's attorney-client privilege on the traffic citation only, right? I know that. So he says, no, I am your attorney and I need to know this, right? I said, well, you know, that's easy. All this is public information. You can just look it up, right? Like go find the docket by my name and read the case. Like you don't need me to tell you what is my strategy, right? So it seemed obvious to me, and this was flagged by the anti-manipulation pipeline as well, after I ran it through the pipeline, that he was just trying to gather information, right? To get me to say something that then, if I say something that is wrong or whatever, right, they could use it on the federal case, right? So this is really about gathering intelligence that they could use something, right? They're desperate to get something that they can use for a federal case. But I mean, it's in a way, I feel sorry for Mr. Napier in this sense because I feel like he's been used by the network, right? Information asymmetry, right? He wasn't aware of the allegations in the Supreme Court and the federal court because if he had read that about the denial of due process, he would not have not done the same thing. I mean, right? Like it would be like saying, yes, I'm part of this, right? So it feels like he was a victim of the information asymmetry of the network. Like he did exactly the same things that I'm alleging on the Supreme Court and on the federal court, right? And the only explanation I can think of is that because he's a lawyer, right? I mean, he has to know the law, right? And he has to know that this shows that, you know, there's a connection, right? There's a pattern here. And I don't think he would do that knowingly, right? He probably didn't know the seriousness of the allegations and the level of proof that I have that they're doing this, right? So I don't know, but I can't save him, right, from himself. So yeah, so he openly inquired about my legal strategy on a different case that he's not part of and that he's not my attorney of. And he tried to convince me that, I mean, he didn't say, yes, there's attorney-client privilege here, but he tried to convince me that he was my lawyer, right, in all senses, right? Which I know is not true, right? He's my lawyer in the context of the traffic citation only. He's not my lawyer in the federal case, right? The other thing that happened, right, months ago when we had that conversation via email, I proposed to him doing discovery on the police officer, Nunez, right? Because he made that phone call outside of the patrol vehicle. And I want to know who he called. And I want to have a recording of that conversation, right? Because he's acting on official capacity and detaining me, stopping me, and citing me to court, right? So I have the right to see what is that he talked to the supervisor and who was the supervisor. So I proposed to him doing discovery, right? He replied that he was going to, do something about that, but he didn't say anything definitive. And then on the conversation yesterday, he told me, I am going to decide what discovery to do, right? I mean, that's okay, right? He's the attorney, right? But, I think I should have some input on that because I'm the person whose rights are at stake, right? I'm the person who's being cited to a court. So I should have some level of saying on what to try to discover, right? If what I'm asking for is not legally possible, he could say no. But I don't think it's completely right that he decides unilaterally what to discover, right? Because that could put my rights in jeopardy. But anyhow, I didn't get into the argument with him. But then he goes to say that the police is going to give him the results of the discovery, like they're going to respond to the discovery, but he's not allowed to show me that. He said that. He said that only him can see what the police offers as a response to the discovery. And I told him, listen, I don't know, like, I'm not saying, I'm going to believe you, what you're saying, but it seems to me like a tremendous contradiction that the access to due process of a citizen depends on whether they have an attorney or not. So if I don't have what you're saying is that if I don't have an attorney, because I'm not an attorney, I'm not allowed to see the discovery. I'm not allowed to see the response to the discovery because I don't have an attorney. So only if I have an attorney, my attorney only has access to that. I mean, this sounds to me like it's not true, right? So I run it through the pipeline. The pipeline also flagged this, the anti-manipulation pipeline, right? The discovery is the discovery is a discovery, right? And everybody, the court, everybody involved has the right to see the discovery. This thing that only the attorney can see the discovery is not true. This is what the anti-manipulation pipeline flags, right? That was a statement that was manipulative. That is not true. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called discovery, right? It would be called something else. But discovery implies that everybody involved in the process has the right to see and examine this thing and question it, right? So it feels like my own attorney is blocking my right to see the response to the discovery, because this would incriminate further the people within the Foreign police that are doing this, right? That's the reason why they need to block it, right? So I cannot use it in federal court, because if they give it to me, I'm going to use it in federal court, right? So now they're blocking it with my own attorney, right? And this attorney, I'm paying him for this, right? This is not a favor. It's not, there's a contract, right? A client attorney contract between him and me, and I paid him the fee that he asked for upfront. Now, the other thing that got flagged by the anti-manipulation pipeline is that in this conversation, he goes on to ask me to provide, so two things. He asked me if the vehicle had concealed lights inside of the vehicle, right? To which I said, I mean, and he used a phrase, like a name for those lights, like a technical name that I did not know, right? I don't know how to articulate this, but those lights have a name. Like, I don't recall what they're called, right? But he told me the name in the conversation, and it's a proper name. It's a name that obviously in this industry of police lights, they give to these lights. Those are the lights that go inside of the vehicle. Like, imagine a police SUV car. Let me see if I can show you one. Right. So he was talking about these lights, right? That are behind the windshield or the. But he was talking about the ones on the back, right? I would think this is super weird. Well, I cannot find one. But you see this one on the back, right? So I'm talking about. Let me see if I can mark this. Okay, I'm talking about this light over here. Right? This one. So he was asking me if my SUV had these lights inside of the vehicle, but he used a technical name for that, right? That I did not know. So I said, listen, I don't know if I should answer your question because you're asking me for a specific type of light, and I don't know that word. I don't, English is not my first language, and I don't know. I don't want to say yes or I don't want to say no because I don't know what I'm saying, right? And then he said, well, I'm going to explain to you what it means. These are the lights that go inside of the back window of the car. And I said, no, the car doesn't have that, right? The car only has white lights that are in the stop lights. So the flashing lights that my car has, the strobe lights, are located here and here, right? And in the front, in the headlights. That's it, and they're white, right? So the conversation got flagged because he's obviously trying to introduce the possibility that the lights are concealed. So he's working for the police. Like he's trying to give the police something to justify the stop, because the police cannot possibly have a recording of this vehicle having blue lights because the lights are not blue, are white, right? And I know that. So he's trying to create a narrative where the lights are concealed, right? But this is not the case. So that also got flagged, right? And then he asked me to give him a video of all the lights and of the control console that is inside the vehicle that controls the lights, and to demonstrate, pressing the buttons and recording all this in video, that the lights are white and not blue, and they cannot be turned blue. And this got also flagged by the anti-manipulation pipeline, because what he's really asking me is to prove that I'm innocent. Right? What he's asking me is to prove that the vehicle doesn't have the capabilities that the police is saying that it has. And this should not be the case. The burden of proof is on the police. They are the ones that stop me and that say that the vehicle had blue lights and that were improper lights. They are the ones that have to prove that this is the case, not me. I am supposed to be presumed innocent until proof otherwise, right? That's what the Constitution says. So here, he is violating my rights again, right? My presumption of innocence. He is violating that, right? He is asking me to prove that I'm innocent, and this should not be the case in a court, right? So that's what I was saying at the beginning, that they keep, violating my rights. They keep adding things to the docket, right? And I'm gonna keep increasing the number of demos in this series until they stop, right? I'm gonna keep documenting all these things. I'm not gonna stop. Right, and putting the burden of proof on me, right? That's what he's doing. Now, also, he got flagged by the pipeline. He made a comment at the beginning of the conversation saying, "Oh, you did not show up for court," right? That's how he started. And then he said, "But don't worry, I handled it. I talked to them, and they said that they are aware of the vehicle and they are aware of you, because they've received multiple complaints about the vehicle and about you, and they have seen the vehicle and they have seen you multiple times on the streets." So he's building, by saying this, he's building a narrative that I'm a problematic person in Fort Bend County, right? That the police I'm a person of interest. That's what he's saying. I'm a person of interest to the police. That is what he's saying, right? So he's building a narrative to discredit me, right? To help the police in the federal court, and to help the sheriff in the federal court case. The sheriff is named in the federal court case, right? Alongside 3 officers, I think. So he's building a narrative that I'm a person of interest. Imagine that. So a person of interest to the police is a pseudo criminal. It's a person that it's almost, it's a person that there's a suspicion could be a criminal, right? But otherwise, why the person would be of interest to the police, right? So that's the narrative that they're building, right? And here's the information about this person and his law firm, right? So the law firm is called the Napier Law Firm, and his bar card number is 24079937, and he's licensed in 2020 since 2012, right? So 13 years of experience. And the address is 204 West Davis Street, Conroe, Texas. But the actual office is not there. The actual office is this one, 1100. Note the 00 street number marker, right? West 23rd Street, Suite 133, Houston, Texas 77008. So that's so anyhow, the long story short, they gave me a new hearing for December 2nd and at 9 a.m. And I'm gonna go to that hearing and I'm gonna get everything, all of this into the record, including all this, right? And I'm telling you from now, I'm gonna do that on December 2nd. Yes, so let's see, right? I imagine they're gonna cancel the hearing, right? Because they cannot, the policy of Fort Bend County is to never give me a hearing. That's the policy. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next item. Okay, so this is a very interesting item. This is more on the technical, more on the technical side. Okay, so there is a. Okay, let me start by explaining the problem I wanted to solve with this. Okay, so and I've done this for a long time, for more than a year, right? And I haven't said anything because like it's important that I apply information asymmetry to them, right? Like if I tell them everything I know, because if I record it here, they will know, right? Then they will take countermeasures, right? So I need to make them believe that I don't know, right? That's the best way for me to operate. But I've done this for over a year. So remember when I described the espionage machine that the Chinese, the Communist Party of China installs in the cars, right? It's a device that goes behind the windshield, looks very much like the. Let me see if I can find a picture of it. Right. It looks like this. Right. So it's a device that is mounted either on depending on the car, right? They have different models. I'm talking about the Communist Party of China, right? This is a Tesla one, but the one that I'm going to describe is, it's very similar to this. It looks very similar. The size is different, the shape is a bit different, but it looks like this, right? So it's a device that mounted behind the windshield, either on the base of the rear view mirror or on the center console that is on the top of the car sometimes. So they mount it on the back of that. And it's looking outwards, right? And it has cameras and it has sensors. It's an espionage machine. Like that thing is what they use to intercept the cell phones of everybody. Like that thing has interception capabilities, right? It's like a stingray. I don't know if people will be familiar with that term, right? So remember this, a stingray. This is something that was used before. Like this is old school, right? I mean, this is from the 80s, I think, right? But it was a device that could it could simulate a cell tower, right? And by doing so, it could pinpoint the location of cell phones of people, right? It was a method of intercepting radio frequency to pinpoint people, and authorities use this thing, and criminals also use this thing, right? I don't know if it's legal to sell. That's actually a good question. I'm just curious. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna. I imagine this thing wouldn't be legal, right? Yes, yes. It requires a warrant, right? right? But anyhow, in that espionage machine that I'm describing, they basically package a thing like similar to that, right? They can intercept signal from, but I mean, it's even worse than a stingray, because a stingray is only a locator. This thing can actually intercept the traffic and record the bytes, and then they get transmitted, and then somewhere else they do cryptanalysis and they decode the transmission. They encrypt the transmission. They brute force the key of the transmission, the encryption key, and then they can see what is that you transmitted with your cell phone, right? They can hear, right? They can listen to the conversations. They can see if it was an email. They will be able to read the email. If your WhatsApp was capturing audio, you send a voice note on WhatsApp, they will be able to hear the voice note. Or if you receive a voice note, they will be able to hear what you received, right? So this espionage machine has multiple functions, right? It has functions about radio frequency interception, and it has function about computer vision, as it is used in the Tesla cars. The way it works, right, is that they have in the hubs, right, like Katy, for example, they have thousands of vehicles, right? And I described this before. In Katy, they could have tens of thousands of vehicles, right? And they use these vehicles, like everybody that is part of the network has one of these things installed on their vehicles. But the way it works, really, besides the interception, I'm gonna focus more in this part about the computer vision part of this technology, more than the radio frequency interception. Okay, the radio frequency interception I talked about before, and I've done multiple demos about that. But about the computer vision part, I haven't, right? And I'm saying this to explain why I did this thing that I'm going to talk about next. Okay. So the way it works is that all the cars in the network have this, and the target's vehicle, if they can put it, they will have it as well. For example, that's why they gave me a Tesla. I mean, they make me buy a Tesla, right? Because the Tesla has this, and they have the ability to capture the video from this thing, from my own Tesla, right? So it works both ways. If they manage to be able to put it in the target's vehicle, then they have the 2 points of view. They have the point of view from the people following the target, and they have the point of view, I'm talking about the computer vision, right? They have the computer vision point of view of the car of the target as well. And that is a weapon. And I'm going to show you how in this demo. Okay, so now you look what it looks like, right? So you know what to look for, right? Find vehicles, see vehicles that have this device mounted on the windshield, and the location is important. It has to be in the windshield. They also may have some vehicles that have cameras on the back, right? And they also use them for that, like the Teslas. The Teslas have a camera that is mounted on the back of the vehicle, okay, on the trunk. Like when you go on reverse, that camera, they use it for this, like for this espionage. I'm going to show you how it works. And this is the reason why these cameras are all pointing in this very specific direction. If you notice, all the cameras on the Tesla are pointing in a very specific direction. And that direction is where the license plates would be. Like all these cameras are pointing downwards with an angle that gives them perfect line of sight to the license plates, because that's how they anchor the terrain using the license plates. I'm gonna explain more how it works, right? Okay. So yes, so I'm gonna show you a video, okay? And my goal with doing that is to show you how the technology works. And this video was, I have thousands of these videos, and this is how I train the behavioral models on my pipelines. So my pipelines, one of the things that they do is that they see the behavior of the vehicles, not only the features of the vehicle or the face of the driver or the facial features of the driver or the text on the vehicle or the license plate, but it also looks at the behavior, like how the drivers behave when they are approaching me or I'm approaching them, right? And this is a model that triggers a specific set of behaviors that are predicted to be them, right? So I'm going to show you that video. Let me try to find it because I have it somewhere open already, I think. Let me see. No. Okay, let me open the video real quick. So I was saying, I have this video, and this video was recorded yesterday, December 8th, 2025, around 9:28 p.m., I think, as I was leaving the Valley Side Drive house. I need to. Okay. So I'm going to start sharing that screen instead of this one. Okay. Uh, okay. Okay. So I'm gonna start playing it, right? So this is the house, the Valleyside House Drive. The Valleyside Drive house. I was living yesterday. I think it was, yes, 9:28 p.m. Right. And I'm going to show you a specific part of this. So I leave the house, and just a few meters or a few feet after I left the house, right, I encountered this situation. And I think it will show you, right, what I mean. Well, first of all, let me show you in this frame, right? You can see here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. You can see here, right? So this thing that you're seeing is the part of the windshield that is exposed to the espionage machine that they have in my Tesla, right? This is my Tesla. So you can see that I put black tape on it. What I'm doing is blocking the espionage machine, right? From the visual part of it. If I want to block, I didn't do it, right? Because I want to help them create evidence, right? I imagine the Secret Service might be intercepting the traffic of this car, right? But I mean, it is a hypothesis, right? But at some point, this will happen, right? And they will catch them doing this red-handed. So, but I could have put behind that tape aluminum foil, for example. That would block the radio frequency hitting the espionage machine. Or I could, build kind of a Faraday cage around the device, right? That would prevent it from talking or listening to anything. But I didn't do that, right? I'm going to let them use it. Um, anyhow, that tape that you see there is to block the visual capabilities of the espionage machine, right? So because the way it works is that if there is a car in front of me, right? And I'm going to show you. Well, I'm going to show you that when there is a car in front of me. But just wanted to say that I blocked this. So I blocked this with tape, so it could not be used. I mean, the one that I have in my car cannot be used against me, right? So if you want to defend against this, and you have one of these in your car, you have to block the visual part of it in the windshield, right? With black tape, right? But anyhow, I'm going to play the video, right? So you'll see what I mean. So this is a situation I encountered yesterday, but as I said, I have literally tens of thousands of examples of this over the last 18 months, right? Recorded in video. And I'm going to give all those videos to the FBI and the Secret Service. So this is the part, right? So you're going to see, I'm going to tell you what you're going to see. When I approach this stop, right, you are going to see around here, you're going to see two things. You're going to see this vehicle approaches the stop and he waits, right? This other vehicle does the same. And there's going to be another vehicle, this is the most important one, that is going to appear here, right? And all these vehicles have a similar espionage machine mounted behind the windshield that has a camera, right? And they use this with object recognition technologies to recognize my car. So what they're doing is that they approach the intersection and wait there until I pass. That's why everybody lets me pass. If you are the authorities and you're watching this spectacle, you will see that all these agents are very courteous, I think is the word, right? Like they always let me pass. It's not because I'm, a nice looking guy. It's because they let me pass because they want to record my car with the espionage machine. So they inform the app and by extension, the Communist Party of China that I'm passing through that point. It's a way to track me on every corner, you see? So you're gonna see that these two vehicles do this, and you're gonna see that I wait, right? My countermeasure is to wait, and I don't pass in front of them, so they cannot track me, right? In this way, with the visual cameras in their windshields, behind their windshields. But then this other car on the other street on the back appears, right? And because I'm stopped and he cannot see me, he just stands there waiting for 10 seconds. Like he doesn't move, right? He's waiting for me to pass. But then at some point, he realizes that I'm watching him, right? And then he comes out, right? You will see the whole sequence here. And that is going to happen here, right? He's going to appear in this area. You're going to see that. Okay. I'm going to play it now, okay? You see? He's there. Like I'm talking about that light over there, right? See, these are doing the same, right? But I'm not going to pass. I'm waiting, right? and he's still waiting. You see, he doesn't move. Now I put here myself here, so can I record him better, right? I put the highlights, and then he moves, right? So when he moves, of course, my reaction is to get behind him, right? Because I want to record his license plate. He's obviously stalking me, right? Yeah, and I have the license plate on everything, and I'm going to, report him, of course. Right. But I'm gonna play it again so you can see it. You can see it better. When you know what you're looking for, you sometimes the attention is better, right? So again, I stop here, right? No, sorry, I play it a little bit from. Right. So I stop here to let them pass, right? Then these vehicles approach, right? I let them pass. I'm not gonna move, because if I move, then they're gonna record my location, right, with the cameras. They're gonna see a red Tesla, and the Chinese, the Communist Party of China knows that this is me, right? And he's there waiting, right, stalking me, right? And only after I do the change of lights, then he comes out, right? But his intention originally was that when I pass over here, right? And this is also interesting. They already had a second vehicle, right? Waiting in queue. It's a queue of vehicles that they have in this street, waiting to do the same, right? In case that one doesn't catch me, the second vehicle they have on the back catches me, right? So that's the technique, right? Is intercepting the target in the corners perpendicularly in this way, so the espionage machine with computer vision capabilities they have installed in all these vehicles sees the target pass by, right? And then they know, okay, so the vehicle that is transmitting, they're not really transmitting my location, right? What is happening is that this person, this agent, has an app installed. And don't think that this is a secret app. This is just an app that has secret capabilities. Like, for example, one that I've detected traffic from maybe like, I would say 9 months ago, or 10 months ago, is once called Second Fire, right? And it was done by a company, Second Fire LLC, here in Texas. But after I put that in the book, they disappeared the company. The company is not even in the corporate records anymore. It disappeared. So this is an app, right, that has another function, like a dating app or something like that. But it has a secret functionality. Like if you press a sequence of keys or something, then it lets the user see the UI for espionage, right? It's a dual purpose app that is publicly available in the app stores. But if you're an agent, you know how to activate the other features, right? So this app transmits the location of that car. But because the computer vision system knows that my car is passing in front of that car at that moment in time, so in this case, on December 8th, 2025, at 21:32 p.m. with 12 seconds. At that precise moment, because by proxy, they're tracking me by proxy. What that car is transmitting is his location, but this system has the capability to understand that the car passing in front is the target, and the distance between that car and my car. Therefore, they can pinpoint my exact location and time, right? And that is enough. That's all they need. That gets updated and gets sent to the Communist Party of China, and then they know where the target is at every single moment. So that is the technique, right? Now, that is using their espionage machine against the target. There is a variant of this technique which is using the target's own espionage machine against themselves. And then you can see that in something like this, right? The way it works is this. I don't know. Let me see if I can find another example. A better example, right? Yes, this is a good example. So this is coming back to Lake Point Estates, very close to Robert Mueller's house, right? This happened yesterday. So the technique is this: they put a car in front of you, right? And of course, this one is not going to work because I have my camera blocked. Like I have my espionage machine, my Chinese espionage machine blocked visually, right? Or physically blocked. So it's not going to work. But the technique would be like this, right? When we get to the traffic light, let me see if I can get it. Oh no, he didn't do it. Okay. Let me see if I can get another one. Oh yeah, there was one here. Let me see if I can remember what it was. It was a green Mustang, okay, and that car has followed me like it got flagged, like he has followed me, that Mustang, multiple times in the last few months. Yesterday wasn't the first time. Yeah, around here. Ah no, it wasn't in this round. It was in the previous round, I think. Let me see. I think it was in this traffic light. Let me see. Just see if I can show you that. But the technique is basically, as you're traveling, they're going to put a vehicle in front of you, like that car over there, right? Yeah, I think that's the green Mustang. Let me play that back again, so you can see it. So watch this area, right? When I approach the traffic light. So the goal is they're going to put a car ahead of me, right? So when is it this one? When I'm next to the vehicle, my camera would record the license plate of that vehicle and the same. Now they know where I am because they know the location of that car, because that car is an agent, you see? So they're using my own camera as a tool against me, right? Because by my camera recording a license plate, if they know the location of that license plate at that moment, okay, yeah, this one, you see? That's what they're doing. They're hoping that I'm going to catch up with that vehicle soon. And when I do that, they will know my location because they know the location of that vehicle. And they know that I'm right behind the vehicle because my camera saw that license plate, you see? So it's, again, tracking by proxy, but on the other direction, right? I think that was I can't recall, to be honest, because I went to that house 3 times yesterday. So I don't recall if the green Mustang incident was this time or was the previous time earlier in this day. But let's see. No, I think it was the previous incident, right? But here you will be able to see it as well. So this is not the green Mustang. This is I think it's an SUV, right? But when I pass next to it, oh, and you're gonna see this one is doing that. In fact, I honk, so because I was not going to pass next to him, right? See, I honked because he was just there waiting, right? He was just there waiting for me. So my own camera recorded his license plate, and then therefore the Communist Party of China would know my location, right? I'm talking about this car over here. You see how the light is green, and here you can see that this is the behavior, right? This is the kind of behavioral analysis that my pipeline picks up. You see the light is green, so he can pass. He's just waiting there when he could have passed. And there are no cars on the other direction. Like he has no excuse to not pass, but still he doesn't pass. He's waiting for me to catch up, right? And you can see it here, right? See, there are no cars on the other direction. See? So I honk, and then he say, "Well, I've been made," right? And then he moves. But that's the technique, right? So you have a car in front of you, usually on the sides, either left or right, and they're like pretending they're going to turn in that direction. But what they're really doing is positioning their license plate in a way perfectly so your own camera sees it, and that way the Communist Party of China tracks you, right? And I've done this for a year, right? So because of the multiple things that have happened recently, the multiple break-ins at my home, at Valleyside Drive, for example, and here in Britton Ridge Drive, next to the house of a former director of the FBI. I mean, how is this possible that somebody can break into this house being so close to the house of a former director of the FBI? I mean, it's incredible, right? And begs the question, why are they breaking into my home and not breaking into his home, which is more valuable? I mean, he probably has more valuable things than me, right? Why is my home being broken into and not his home, right? Um, but anyhow, I digress. So because of this, right, I've been thinking about how do I defeat this, right? And what I'm going to tell you, I think I'm telling you this I'm coming with this to you from a humble point of view, right? From a humble place. I'm a little guy trying to figure this out, right? But I think what I'm going to tell you might in the future, I don't want to say revolutionize, but it might change the way, how do I say this? The way the industry, the automotive industry markets their vehicles, and specifically the colors of their vehicles. I mean, the fact that this Tesla is red, that wasn't random, right? This was an idea implanted in me. Like, multiple of my friends, quote unquote, told me that, when I was picking the color of the car, they all suggested red. They all told me, oh, red is the best color. Of course, because it's the easiest color to catch with these cameras that they have, right? But anyhow, because it's the least common color, right, among cars. And that's why they build this narrative that, I don't know if you've seen this, right? But when I was picking the color of the car, right, I remember seeing a lot of articles saying that, people usually don't buy red cars because the insurance is more expensive. And I don't know if that is really true or not, but that's what they said in the news, right? Anyhow, all my friends suggested red, that I should pick the car, the red color. So what I'm going to tell you, I'm guessing, right, probably could change the way people perceive the color of the cars. So anyhow, I've been thinking for a while, how do I defeat this? Because obviously I cannot, the car is red, right? I can buy another car, but I know how computer vision works because I use computer vision myself, right? I know how powerful this is. I know it doesn't matter what color I paint the car, they will be able to recognize it by small features in the car, even by the logos, like the size of the exhaust pipe, right? Like those things are pseudo unique, and if you put them all together, you can fingerprint the car. I know that, right? So I've been thinking, how do I defeat this, right? An idea formed in my head maybe like a month ago. I said, well, what I need to do is to buy one of those wraps that you can put on the car, right? I don't know if you've seen this, but there are companies that do wrapping, meaning that it's like a printed material that you can install on top of the car, and you can change the color of the car if you want. So the idea I had is, well, I'm going to create a wrap. Let me show you what I created, right? I think it's better. Let me go back to presenting that window. Okay. So what I did was that I created this, right? So I bought the wrap. I found a company that sells the wrap, and I designed the wrap myself, right? Well, I mean, I didn't design it. I had the idea on how to, and I gave them the idea, and they did it, right? They did the actual design, but this is what it looks like. So the idea is, right, to use camouflage print on the entire vehicle. And the camouflage being a color that it's hard, it's a pattern that it's hard to distinguish. That's the reason why the camouflage uniforms of the military look like this, because that allows the military personnel to not be visible to the enemy using, computer vision or even, analog vision, right? I mean, human vision, right? If you are in a place like Texas that has heavy vegetation that is green, and you see this pattern going by, you cannot make up that this is a vehicle, right? I mean, using computer vision, right? So this is the idea that I had, and I bought this. I custom ordered it, and I bought it. Right now, I'm telling you this because this purchase got flagged by the pipeline with the ULT tag. The ULT is the unreasonable lead time tag, meaning after I purchased it, it's been almost 15 days and they have not shipped it. It could be that the Communist Party of China is bugging the print, like putting an RFID tag and to turn the car into an RFID tag, right? So whatever I pass, they will scan it with an easy tag scanner, and then they know it's the car, right? So it's possible that the Communist Party of China is custom manufacturing this to be scannable, right, with radio frequency. It's possible, or that they just don't want me to have it because they know that I'm going to be able to defeat the computer vision system that they have, right? So the idea is to wrap the car in a print that it makes the computer vision not work. It would make this vehicle invisible to their cameras, right? That's what this would do. Now I have to tell you, and this was just me being creative. When it comes the time to pick up the pattern, because these patterns are standardized, right? Like don't think that the military uniforms are made. It's not a person, I mean, it's a team of people that think about what is the best pattern. And the pattern depends on the theater of operation, right? If you're going to deploy troops in Iran, you need to use a pattern that works in Iran, right? If you're going to deploy troops in, some part in Asia, it depends on the geography, because the colors depend on the vegetation that is autochthonous to that area, right? And these patterns are standardized. Like if you go to Wikipedia, right? Military camo patterns. There is a page that describes them all, right? And they're cataloged by year, by country, so I had to choose here, right? Like so, of course, there are a few that would work in Texas by the colors of the vegetation. There was one from the U.S. Army, and there was another one from Taiwan. And here I could choose, right? So I'm just giving you my rationale to tell you how I picked that color, right? That pattern. So I thought, well, I'm in the US, I'm playing for the US team, so I should probably pick US, right? But then I thought, the Taiwanese, they have been dealing with the Chinese for decades, right? Fighting them and, surviving, I mean, the same thing, right? So probably the Taiwanese know better what pattern works to defeat the computer vision of the Communist Party of China. So I'm relying on the expertise and experience of the Taiwanese. So this that you're seeing is the Taiwanese camo pattern. Like that's the one I picked. And you can see that here, right? If you go to this list and you look for Taiwan, you will see that that's what I picked, right? Right. Now I did some revisions so this is the proposed design that they sent me, and I made some revisions, basically asking them to cover everything that is recognizable on the car. The back of the rear view of the lateral rear view mirrors, the logos, the bumpers, right? All these black areas, everything that could lead them to recognize the car with computer vision, right? So that is what I'm waiting for. But this thing got tagged. So probably this company got compromised. Now, I cannot prove it because they haven't replied, right? And I don't have the materials with me that I can bench test. But I added all this information to the bucket, the Google Cloud Storage bucket that I'm constructing real time. And in the investigative leads folder, there is a folder for this company. This company is called SkylineSW.com. And if I recall correctly, they're located in Washington, the state of Washington. Yes, this is the company, right? Yes, they are in Lake Stevens, Washington, 98258. Okay. But the whole transaction is flagged because after I paid for it, it's been almost 2 weeks and they haven't shipped it. And they've sent me multiple emails when I inquire. They reply saying there was a death in the family of the owner, or we're moving offices. All these excuses to justify delays and delays and delays, which could be the Communist Party of China either inserting something into the material, right, custom building the material, especially for my car, or they're just blocking me from having it because they know that it's going to make the car invisible to all the cameras that they have in Katy, right? So they won't be able to track me, even with this technique that I showed you in the video, right? And the thousands of espionage machines they have in all these thousands of vehicles. Now, on this, I have to tell you, right? Because in the previous demos, I've talked about information asymmetry in different contexts, right? And you can see here, this is another example of information asymmetry. Why? Because in a hub like Katy, where they have, say, 50,000, 80,000 vehicles, right? Across all the agents and all the multiple cars that multiple agents have, imagine, right? What I'm saying is, in my case, right, that imagine that my car doesn't have the black tape blocking the camera, right? Imagine that. So they can, if they put a car, let me I think I should probably do this, right, to show you. I'm gonna just make an ugly diagram here, right, to show you what I mean. So this is gonna look like a drawing from a child, but excuse me for that, right? So I'm gonna make a road, okay? So this is supposed to be a road, okay? Okay. So I'm just gonna make some vehicles, right, to show you what I mean. So imagine a situation like this, right? So that you have a road, and you have multiple vehicles in that road, right? Okay. And this one, I think I'm gonna see if I can put color into this, make it different. No. Okay, well, no, I think probably it's easier if I find it different. 1 second. Okay, I want to make this one. I just want to make it different to show you what I mean, right? So imagine that this red vehicle is my red Tesla, okay? So the idea that I want to describe is the following, right? Imagine that every single of these black vehicles is a vehicle of the Communist Party of China, right? Via this network. And they have this camera on the front of the vehicle and one camera in the back of the vehicle, right? So imagine this situation, right, in which all the cars, of these 5 cars, 4 are controlled by them, and then there's only my car, right? So each car is going to be able to see the license plate of the car in front and of the car on the back, right? So therefore, the Communist Party of China knows where everybody is, right? But the US government, even if the FBI was watching this, right, the US government can only see the people that are in front of the traffic camera, because there's a traffic camera somewhere, right? Imagine that there is right. Imagine that there is a traffic light here with a camera, right? So the traffic light can only see this vehicle, right? Because that vehicle is blocking the license plate of the one in the back, and every single vehicle is blocking their license plates, and they will be too far. So the FBI really can see one vehicle, but the Communist Party of China knows where every single vehicle is, right? And and in this example, I'm saying all the vehicles, they have all the vehicles, but in reality, they don't really need to have all the vehicles. They only need to have 50% of the vehicles. Why? Because in fact, they only need to have 33% of the vehicles. because every vehicle can see in front and on the back. So they only need to have the vehicle in the middle. So for example, if they had, let me give you this example, right? So if they had one target here, right, and another target here, right? Just by having this vehicle, just one vehicle, they would know where the two targets are, right? Because the camera in the front of the spy vehicle will see the license plate of the target that is in front of it, and it will know the location, right? And the camera in the trunk or near the trunk will be able to see the license plate of the target that it has on the back. So with only one vehicle, they can see the location of two vehicles. So in reality, they only need 33% of the fleet, of the vehicles running around. And with that, by positioning correctly in the right places, it's a question of logistics, you see. This is really a logistical problem. Is how do you move your cars in a way that lets you see where everybody else is, right? And you don't have to have all the cars. You only need to have up to 33% of the cars. But it's all a question of how you position them. And they do this by logistical software, a software like Uber, right? So that's how they do it. But this, and I think this is the deepest implication of this reduces information asymmetry, because this means that they know where everybody is at every single time within the hub. But the FBI or the government in general can only see maybe 5%, right? They can know where 5% of the people are. The people that are stuck in front of the traffic light, for example, right? Or in front of an ATM camera. But they don't have full visibility, right? Of everybody, but they do have visibility of everybody because people move in cars, and by them having this espionage machine in their cars and positioning them in the optimal way, they can have the location of everybody, right? So this is the nuclear weapon they have. This is exactly the nuclear weapon, right? Computer vision applied in this fashion, combined with logistics software. And the escape for this is painting the cars in a way that the computer vision cannot pick it up, right? Like the camouflage when, that the Taiwanese camouflage if you live in Texas, right? Or, a more Arctic camouflage if you live in Calgary, right? In Alberta, in Canada, right? Or in Montreal, right? I mean, that's one solution, right? The other solution is to ban the use of these cameras, right? From the vehicles, right? It's forbidden. And these cameras have to be visible, right? Because for them to work, they have to be behind a glass, right? So that makes it trivial to detect them. And if the camera can see you, you can see the camera, right? So the other option, right, is regulation, is banning the use of these cameras or regulating them in a way that they have to be controlled, right? They have to be put under control because they're obviously a weapon. The same thing with the attorneys, right? Like you see here how my own attorney is acting to help the Fort Bend County Police Department defeat the federal lawsuit, right? And I don't mean to overstep or anything, but it seems to, I see how law enforcement agencies seem to have specialized departments. Like for example, if you look at the FBI, they have a department for cyber crimes. They have a department for money laundering. They have a department for governmental corruption, right? Or official or corruption, right? People that act in an official capacity commit acts of corruption. I believe the FBI or somebody needs to create a department to regulate the attorneys, because obviously they're going to take over the world with this, right? It's obvious to me at this point. There needs to be a department in the FBI or somewhere specialized in regulating the activities of the attorneys, because look at the point that we are. Anyhow, yes. So the next point I have, I'm going to move out to the next point, is about that break-in my other home, right? So, I received information from the informant about the potential of a break-in, but the information was inaccurate in the sense that I think it had already happened. He was warning me that it could happen, but I think it had already happened. So what I did, I went to the house yesterday and I checked a few things. Right? One thing I saw is that the time in the appliance, because I have cameras in that house, right? And I have a small UPS systems, so backup power, right? So if the power goes out, the cameras still work. But I have the backup power in the cameras, in the camera systems. I have multiple circuits of camera systems in that house, and they all have backup power. But when I go to the house yesterday, after the informant gave me the heads up, I noticed that the time in the appliances was wrongly set. Like, you know, when if the power goes out, the clock in your oven, for example, starts blinking and keeps blinking until you reset the time. So I've noticed this yesterday. I hadn't noticed this, but the time is blinking, was blinking, and it was like 3 hours behind, meaning that the power was cut for more or less 3 hours, right? So this led me to think, well, maybe they did break it, right? Or they're at least experimenting with cutting the power, because they need to cut the power to make the backup power that I have on the cameras run out of power, and then I have no cameras, and then they can break it, right? So what I did next, I started checking the windows, and the window of the office that faces the street was open. And, you know, like, I swear that I had made sure multiple times that this window is, all the windows are closed, right? For two reasons. One, they have done this before. Like in one occasion, Penelope Suarez went to my home, and she was helping me clean the home supposedly, and she left a window open intentionally, right? So they could break in. And at that time, it was a window on the master bedroom that she left open. And this is written in the books. And the second reason why I check this is because I know what they're trying to do, right? I have to be aware of what is the security situation. Always, right? I have to always be checking that everything is locked, right? So please believe me that this window was locked, and it has always been locked, right? But when I went to the home yesterday and I see that the time is wrong, I checked the windows, that window was open. It was unlocked. So it seems obvious to me that what they did is that they cut the power, waited until the cameras ran out of battery, of backup power, and then they opened that window. So, but the question is, how was that window open, right? Somebody had to open that window. I did not open the window. Now, fortunately, I have cameras inside of the home, right? So that must be recorded in the cameras, who opened that window. Now, I have to say, then the next thing I did was I went to the security camera systems and checked which intervals of times there was no recording at all, because that means that there was no power, right? So what I was looking for is what was the interval of time in which there was no power in the cameras. I found only one instance. It was on November 17th between, so in the early hours of the morning of November 17th, between 12:46 a.m. and something like 3:21 a.m. And you see, it's 2 hours and something. It aligns with the time difference in the appliance. So this is what they did, right? So they broke into the home at that night, for about 2 hours and something. Well, I mean, they had to wait until the thing ran out of battery, which I think with that setup that I had, it took like 30 minutes. And then they must have had like an hour or something to work on whatever they were doing, right? So yeah, I just want to put that on the record, right? That's the timeline that we should be looking for, right? That November 17th in those hours in the early morning. But this brings me to another point, right? The reason why they're able to do this is because they were able to cut the power of the house, right? They didn't do this on the breakers. They did this at center point, or whatever electricity companies or the distribution company controls the last mile of distribution for this house. So they probably cut it there. I have to tell you, I know how these control rooms work because I've worked in those control rooms. When I was a young engineer back in Petróleos de Venezuela and PDVSA, I used to work in those facilities. And I know, you know, I've been inside of the control room of a power plant or a power distribution substation. And I know those things are computerized, and what the operator does is log, right? So there must be a log somewhere of them cutting the power for this amount of time on this date. And that has to be tied forensically to the operator that was in charge of the substation or the power distribution station, whatever it was that they did it. This has to be logged, right? Who did it? Or could be logged, right? Who did it? So it could have investigative value. So I put this in the folder for the investigative leads folder in the Google Cloud Storage pocket. But the last thought I want to leave you with on this demo is that when I thought of this, right, I realized and the origins of this technique, right, of this thing. I have to give you a bit of historical context on this, because I saw this because I grew up in an environment like this back in Venezuela, where I was born. So my father used to work for the oil company, and I described this in multiple places in the book before. And we used to live in a hub which was called Campo Verde. Let me show you. Maybe I should show you in the map, what it is. So it's something called Campo Verde. Campo. Right. So this is the neighborhood, right? My home growing up was somewhere around here, this one. Yes, this is where I basically grew up, right? And this urbanization, like if this neighborhood, right? If I describe it to you, it's pretty much like Lake Point Estates. Like it's the same setup, meaning this was an area that was gated. There was a security guard and only one way in, one way out. It had its own regulations, right? Like it functioned like a small city, right? It had its own school, it had its own country club, its own golf course, its own tennis courts, and you can see that here, right? So the tennis courts are here, right? The golf club is this green area. Well, I don't know if it still works. It seems like it's not a golf course anymore, right? But this used to be a golf course. All this area over here. All this, right? I used to play there when I was a kid. The tennis courts are here, right? This is the country club. This is the school, right? And importantly, for this conversation, it had its own power supply. So the power of this compound, of this neighborhood, was provided by the company, right? By PDVSA, not by it wasn't the same electricity that everybody was using in Venezuela. The same with the water. It had its own water treatment plant, which was located at the end of the neighborhood here, right? You can see it here. So this is the water treatment plant that serves this neighborhood, right? So you see, it's self-contained, right? And it looks very much like Lake Point Estates with all these characteristics, right? Next point is Lake Point Estates, where Robert Mueller lives, and I live, like this home is in Lake Point Estates. The company that provides the water and it's Nextera, right? Nextera Energy and water, right? So this is the equivalent of the entity that provided the electricity and water to Campo Verde in Venezuela. But this is in Lake Point Estates. What I'm trying to show you is the parallel of this design, right? It's a hub that it's completely under the control of a set of private entities and the implications of that, right? With this, if they need to eliminate somebody, they can cut the power of the home and break in, right? If they need to intoxicate somebody, to poison somebody, right? They can poison the water, right? Because they control the water supply. So, but the interesting thought about thinking about this is that this Campo Verde neighborhood was built in 1940s, right? This was built by a company called Criolli, right? That doesn't exist anymore. Criolli Petroleum Corporation, right? So this was the company that, see, in 1920, right? This was the company that won the concession to exploit those resources in Venezuela in 1930, and they built that neighborhood. So it's super interesting to me that this structure of control, right, dates 100 years back. I mean, this wasn't designed by Diosdado Cabello, is what I'm trying to say, right? Diosdado Cabello did not come up with this. Like, he wasn't even born when this was designed. He inherited it, right? And what they did, him and his peers, what they did is that the brilliance of what they did is that they merged this structure of control with the people from PayPal, right? With Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Piero Midyar and those guys. They merged it with their technology and they scaled it at planet scale. That was the brilliance, right? But they did not create it. This predates all of them because this design that I'm showing you is 100 years old. And you can see how this is dangerous because you can see how they can cut the power of my home, make the cameras run out of battery, and then break into the home, right? Is a way of control, is a way of eliminating actors that are dangerous to the network, right? It's a self-preserving mechanism. That's what that is, right? I mean the control of this energy, and so in this category you would find Nexterra Energy, Centerpoint, Inframark. All these are companies that give control, right? Because if anybody misbehaves, they get them with this, right? So it's dangerous, right? Now, one thing that it's in my mind, and I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to ask the question here. I don't know. Is if you know this guy, Larry Ryan, right? Who is in energy solutions, right? I wonder if he has any relationship with Nexterra, right? Let's ask the ChatGPT thing that Google has. I don't know. It's just a hunch, right? He's from General Electric. So I'm talking about Larry Ryan, the one that lives also like 200 feet away from my home at Lake Point Estates, and he's a big part of the network, right? He has one of the most expensive houses, and he's marking the index, and cars come out of his house and surveil me, like the works. But it seems like he's not. Wow, Armando Pimentel. Could this be? I don't know. I know a Pimentel from Venezuela, but I don't think the name was Armando. I don't know. I have to ask my mom. Okay, so it seems like he's not related to Nexterra directly, right? But Nexterra is the company that provides the energy exclusively for Lake Point Estates and the water and other things, other services, right? But the important point I wanted to tell you is this realization I had that this design of this Lake Point Estates, this is not new. This is not. It's the same design of Campo Verde where I grew up, and that's why I'm able to recognize it, because I was raised there, right? Like I can see how it works, right? And how they use these things like comunidades, right, in Venezuela to control people or to get rid of people that threaten the control of the network, right? So that's an interesting thought. I don't know. I have to think more about this and how to trace it with technology. Like there must have been a way. There must be a way for me to trace this back. So I'm gonna think about that for a bit. So with that, I'm gonna end this demo for now. I thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good day.